From the Central Western Washington area, Choice Regional Health Network presents the Equity Circle podcast, a place for information with integrity, accountability, and innovation. Enjoy the episode. All right, everyone, welcome to the Equity Circle podcast. My name is Lawrence Kinnaman, and I am your host. I'm excited today to have Kassie Trotter on to talk about the COVID vaccine. So welcome, Kassie, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, Cassie, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do at your organization, what your organization is, and a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. So I work at Family Education and Support Services. I am the clinical director for the Parent-Child Assistance Program, or PCAP as we call it. We're a 3-year home visitation program for moms who have used drugs or alcohol during pregnancy. So generally, we work with pretty high-risk populations, and we're with them for 3 years.
Yeah. What does that look like? I'm just curious, what does that look like with COVID? And because you said you go into the homes, correct?
Yeah. A huge part of our program is role modeling and relationship building. So we really go, if home is a tent, we go to the tent. If home is an apartment, if home is with 5 other people or an inpatient facility, that's where we go. So it has definitely been a difficult task the last 2 years. But, we are kind of masters at figuring things out. And that is kind of our job in general. So, we have been just adjusting as we go. And luckily this summer has been pretty decent. So we've been able to do a lot of, outside, still go to home, but maybe, the majority of the visit is sitting outside and being able to socially distance, obviously masks and hand sanitizer and everything like that.
Sure. Well, I think if anything, the pandemic has taught us that we really have to be flexible and just adjust our plans. So, well, today we're going to be talking about the COVID vaccine, and our podcast really is to discuss equity and what that's looked like in your community. And before we kind of get into that, I would love to hear if you got vaccinated and why you chose to be vaccinated.
Yeah, I have been vaccinated. I was at the very beginning, kind of in that second group that was able to go. So I spent, I think, like a month online trying to find, an open appointment.
Sure.
So, there was a lot of reasons for me that I got vaccinated. One, I work with high-risk populations. I work with pregnant women. I work with babies. Our team does. And, my parents are older and are high risk. And I really just wanted to make sure that, my family was safe and that everybody I'm around is safe. And just, COVID-19 and all of the variants, it sounds new, but it's really been around for a long time. And I understand how kind of immunizations work. And so it wasn't really something to second guess for myself. I really want the world to go back to normal a little bit. So.
Yeah, I think we all do. That's for sure. Well, so for you, it sounds like your main reasons were, for one, it sounded like there wasn't really any hesitation given your understanding of immunizations. And secondly, it sounds like you really wanted to make sure that the people that you serve and your family and the people that you're around are safe as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. And obviously for myself also, but I know that, I am in a lower risk category than others as far as catching it goes. So the idea, of being able to spread it unknowingly was kind of a huge thing for me. I spent the first couple of months really not being able to hug my parents, which when they're older, so that really was just kind of something I wanted to be able to do. And really at the same time, the immunizations themselves, have been required to get vaccinations for so many things anyways.
Sure.
That even if there's a risk with everything. There's a risk of taking Tylenol. So for me, if there were some side effects, the risk, the benefit outweighed the risk.
Sure.
I would rather have a side effect or not feel good for a couple of days than potentially give it to, a client or my parents and have them get really ill and have to, be in the hospital. So
sure. Yeah, when we spoke with your colleague Kiyoki, it was that was kind of a similar thing that he shared, was his fear of passing it on to other people and really not wanting to pass it on to family members or the clients that he serves and being around other people. So I think that completely makes sense. What sort of acceptance have you seen specifically in your professional setting? Like, what sort of acceptance have you seen within the community that you serve around the vaccine?
So it's kind of a mixed situation. So our program specifically, we serve Thurston, Mason, and Lewis County.
Okay.
And all three of those counties are very different.
Yeah.
You have a different population in Thurston and a different mindset than maybe you do in Lewis County.
Sure.
So I would say, here in Thurston County, it's been, mostly not an issue. Most people are ready to do it or have done it. There's a lot of state workers. There's a lot of public places. People want to go downtown. And then you kind of go to the more rural areas like Lewis and Mason County.
Sure.
And there's a lot more misinformation, a lot less education, a lot less access to, vaccine clinics. It's getting better. It definitely has gotten better over the past year.
Yeah.
But that first 6 months to a year, I live in Lewis County, and even for me, knowing where to go and how to find it and having the information and resources at, my disposal, it was difficult to find one in my county. So, yeah.
So it sounds like the communities are different, but the acceptance was also different based on the communities. And I think that's it's very true for a lot of the rural settings, that maybe there's a lot less access or information or misinformation. I know we've run into that as well. So hearing about some of the acceptance in your community, as well as why you chose to get vaccinated, can you tell me a little bit more about what sort of hesitancies that you've seen? I know you've mentioned like misinformation, but maybe even getting a little more specific into some of those reasons why people are hesitant.
So I think like here in Thurston County, a lot of the hesitation is more of, is it safe? Are there going to be long-term side effects? How do we know what this is going to look like? And then just kind of the lack of quality information, right? You can go on the internet. I can Google absolutely anything I want, and I can find a yes and a no for that.
Sure. Yeah.
So if you don't know necessarily how to find, verifiable information or who to trust, you can really find anything.
Yeah.
And, in Lewis County, I would say a large part of the hesitancy down there and some in Mason a little bit is really just people's desire to, I guess you would say, express their freedom of choice. And, obviously in life from a young age to being adult, nobody really likes being told what they have to do.
Sure.
And so they're in communities where it is more rural, there is not quite the, urban or big areas where they're able to access information more viably. In Lewis County, the county stretches so far.
Yeah, it really does.
That it can take an hour and a half to get to like East Lewis County. And there's really nothing in between except for maybe a hospital. And so if all you have are your community members and there's not a lot of information, it really is a matter of people kind of believing what they're told. And why wouldn't they? This is their community members. It's a small town. Of course I want to believe so-and-so when they say that it's not safe, because why would they tell me it's not?
So it sounds like there is really a sense of maybe lack of education and information, would you say, is kind of like the biggest reasons? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that also, in a lot of those smaller communities, I mean, it's like any sort of other health education.
Sure.
If you're not grown up or taught growing up that this is kind of how it works, or this
Sure.
is what should be done, or this
Sure.
is how we eradicated all these other diseases, and that's not really understood, having someone tell you that, you have to do something and you have to put something in your body can be very intimidating. So,
Yeah.
It's a somewhere between education, a lack of, role modeling, and just, I mean, honestly, the amount of misinformation, and locations where people are getting information. The majority of the time I hear people are getting their information from YouTube.
Yeah.
And that is kind of scary. And not everybody understands that anybody can go on. I can go on YouTube and I can post something saying that I know everything about the vaccine and that I'm right. And, there's not really anything stopping that. So
that's very true. I one of the resources that's been very helpful for us as an organization and that we've shared with others is the Public Health Collaborative has a misinformation alert that consistently has alerts on what people are saying and a lot of the misinformation that's being shared. And so I think that's been very, very helpful. I am curious to hear a little bit more about things that have helped vaccine acceptance, or any things that you've seen that have really reduced that hesitancy.
Well, I know specifically in our program, our entire team has been vaccinated and has been for some time. And a large portion of why our program works and why we're funded, why we are funded, is because we're with someone for 3 years and we role model, and they're able to, a lot of our clients didn't have the best upbringing, don't have a high school or college education. And so they have this person for 3 years who they trust and who they've built a relationship with and who they know is going to, help guide them and be truthful with them. And so as a team, I mean, there wasn't really any hesitancy with us getting vaccinated. It was something we wanted to do as soon as possible. And by doing that, we were able to really show our clients and their family, like, this is what we're doing. This is why. And, they're also able to see us be fine, get the immunization and be fine. So really just us role modeling for our clients. And then, we have the ability to connect them to a, verifiable sources and information. And sometimes that looks like just having a conversation. I mean, there are certainly people we have who have dyslexia or have cognitive delays that read not something they're able to do. So, we really take the time to be like, hey, do you have questions about it? And what does that look like? And, we know that about them. So we can sit down and read it with them and have a discussion that is completely, unbiased, really. We may personally want them to get vaccinated. At the same time, if there's hesitancy, our job is not to necessarily push it on them, but just to help educate them and help them be able to make a smart decision for themselves and their family.
So the resources that you guys have and the connections that you guys have, as well as just that value, it seems like, of role modeling, not only with this, but in other areas of what you guys do at Family Education and Support Services. It sounds like those are the things that have really helped people kind of reduce that vaccine hesitancy. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we are somewhere between, we have a working relationship with them, but we're also professional. And, if we don't know something, we don't act like we do. We say,
Sure.
you know what, I don't know either. Let's figure it out together. And like, we can go to the Department of Health website, we can go to the CDC website, and giving them, you know, valid places to find it and finding it together, and having a discussion about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cassie, I really appreciated having you on the podcast to talk about the vaccine, and you know, as we kind of come to a close here, I'd like to hear just why you think, or what encouragement you would give for people to why they should get vaccinated, or if there's any other final encouragement you would like to share kind of as we come to a close today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just really hope that everybody will take a minute to really think about what this is going to look like in the future and how we are going to get to where we want to be, back in to, you know, our ability to do everything from kids going to school safely, to going to the grocery store safely, to being able to visit family on holidays safely. Just really thinking about what we want our future to look like. And, you know, this is going to be the first step to making that happen, on top of obviously masking and washing hands and being cautious. But
well, I you know, today as we're recording, it's actually for many people, it's the first day of going back to school after the Labor Day weekend, and so it is exciting, and I do hope that people stay safe. And Cassie, we really appreciated having you on today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we have been listening to Kassie Trotter from Family Education and Support Services, and we thank her again for being on the podcast, and we thank you listeners for listening to another episode of the Equity Circle podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast and share it with friends and family. We are on all major platforms. So thank you for your time, and remember that equity equals progress.